I had my first son in November of 2022, and I took some leave. And during that time, I wrote a bot for like live odds scraping, plus EV kind of stuff. You know, a pretty easy project.
Come on, let's go!
You think I'm gonna come on here and put one of the Aussies in the elite tier?
I'd vote for Rob of 25,000. I wouldn't vote for you.
I can basically just cheat and get the same bets that they're getting. And
it's weird because you can also pay your bills at the same place where you bet.
I mean, you're a short guy.
What?
This guy talks a lot of trash. He's talked a lot of trash about me, Rob, a lot of people in the community, but he's refusing to show his face.
Touting yourself as a pretty good NFL gambler, I thought you were an idiot.
Say testing, I'm a cuck. 1, 2, 3, 4.
The Aussies, going head-to-head with the Aussies. That's what I drew for, and I said, get him, Kirk.
And they call me a mean-spirited name. I don't hang out with them.
The Toronto Maple Leafs at 14-1, staring me dead in the face.
I'm already getting, a lot of early. This could be the best Circles Off episode that's ever been done.
Welcome to Circles Off, episode number 169, part of the Hammer Betting Network, presented by Pinnacle Sportsbook. I am Rob Pizzola, joined as always by Johnny from BetStamp. How's it going?
Pretty good. Got a good episode this week. I think we're going to get right into it, but interesting guest for sure, and something new in the sports betting space.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to explore kind of a hybrid model from a new book in the space. Very interesting, very intriguing guest for sure. But before we do want to remind you, football season has started. College football this past week. NFL is on the horizon. If you are serious about sports betting, you have to do what pro bettors have known for decades. Join Pinnacle Sportsbook. Use code HAMMER if you're going to do so. It does support us here on Circles Off. But honestly, great limits for bettors, great offering, really solid product. And honestly, if you want to get down on football season, it's your spot to do so if you're in Canada. So make sure you do check out Pinnacle. Our guest this week on Circles Off goes by Big Buck Hunter on Twitter. We'll link that down in the description below. He is the head of trading for NoVig, a brand new sports betting exchange, which will be launching in time for the NFL regular season. Henry Kerins joins us today on Circles Off. Henry, how's it going?
It's going great. It's a pleasure to see you guys and be here.
Yeah, it's just let's start this off by saying I'm pretty sure I walked by you about 100 times at BetBash and didn't introduce myself to you. So apologies on that front. I even saw your chat with Judah, Fort Gang, the NFL one, which we can talk about a little bit later. But that was just weird. And Johnny, you were there as well. Do you remember Henry at all?
I did not. He should have said hi to us. No?
I was there for 36 hours, basically just to do the presentation with Judah. So I was hitting some priority targets. You guys were on this, honestly, because we are still building NoVig. We're live to a couple thousand people. We had like a wait list, and we let everybody on the wait list in and then closed it at that. That's the reason I was the only person from NoVig at BetBash, is that just like we felt like we should have our heads down and be working and not doing like promo podcast stuff until there was something real. But now there's something real.
I respect that. So you're there 36 hours. Do you have time for any table games?
No table games. I got a few hands at the tables at the Win playing 5-10 no limit, but that was it.
Okay.
Nice. Poker guy.
Nice. Are you a poker player?
That's how I started. Like when COVID happened, I threw myself into learning poker. Like I got PioSolver and did some training, and I bought a big data set of mid-stake Zoom hands from Ignition and just like did everything I could to try and get good fast. And that was how I met a bunch of pro or kind of semi-pro poker players and some guys who were like betting on sports for a living, but also playing a lot of poker. And all those agents that were running those private games at the time also had like books. And so then when I got into sports, it was for a while pretty easy to get accounts and outs and network that way. So that was kind of my journey into the sports thing. And then I haven't played much poker at all in the last couple of years.
So your journey into sports started during COVID.
Yeah, in all like kind of serious ways. Before that, I'd bet like $50 a game on NFL spreads on and offshore, but I had no delusion that I was winning. I was just doing it for fun.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty interesting because obviously that's not too long ago, and you're sitting with a head of trading position right now. It's not too many people who could say that they got into sports, like sports betting, a few years ago, and are now running trading for someone who's a book.
Basically.
Trying to
are
make
you
a
betting
dent.
at all yourself?
I am, yeah. I was betting more before I joined NoVig. Like that was, especially, I was an engineer at Bloomberg for 5 years, and the nature of engineering jobs is once you've been there a few years, there's a lot of free time. So I was just like hustling really hard and making good money doing it. I had my first son in November of 2022, and I took some leave. And during that time, I wrote a bot for like live odds scraping, plus EV kind of stuff. You know, a pretty easy project, but to just like do a personal software project working with betting data sets. And then what I did was I reached out to a bunch of VCs, founders, kind of smart people I knew, and just said, here's who I am. This is what I've been doing. I respect what you do. Would love a conversation for career advice, just to kind of brainstorm, and had a bunch of calls like that. Got a survey of what I thought was happening in the industry. Decided I want to be a bookmaker. Honestly, that was my conclusion, was that if you have a family and you want some steady income, the bookmaking side made sense for me, especially having like an engineering background too, and just knowing like I can sit down on a computer and just build things for 8 hours a day and make progress. Whereas betting is kind of like 24 hours a day, or more asynchronous. And then I found out about NoVig, and they had an option to build your own role. And so I wrote them a cover letter and said, I think it would be really advantageous to you guys if you actually seeded all your own markets. You didn't have to partner with all these market makers, negotiate these awful profit split agreements with them. You just run it all in-house, and I think I could build the whole thing. And they brought me in. We talked about it for a day, did an interview, and they were on board. And so I joined a little over a year ago, and just built that, did exactly that.
So with that model, that's more like the sharp book model, like Booking House. I know maybe this is, but NoVig is not planning to restrict any players or anything like that. Is that correct?
We're not planning to restrict any players. So we're operating under a sweepstakes regulatory framework. It's a kind of a nightmare how complicated this thing is to describe. It's really not that complicated. You install the app, it works like anything else. But the language around it is a little strange. So we're using the sweepstakes regulatory framework, which is what Global Poker uses. It's what Fliff uses. It's what ProfitX is now using. And that gets us into a lot of states that do not have legalized sports betting apps. So the original thesis of the company was very much a sports betting exchange, no commission, obviously no limiting anybody. Nobody's orders get any kind of priority or anything like that. Very fair. Now that we're in so many more states, that still is the way the product works. But we've definitely considered there are these trade-offs, right? Like you can offer really, really sweet product if you're willing to cut off some users from the product. And that's not a road we want to go down now. But if you live in Texas or California, you just don't have a same game parlay app on your phone, period. And if I said, I can give that to you, but I got to cut you off from it if you're killing me, and then you can only bet straight markets, how unfair is that really? For now, nobody gets limited. Probably stupid to even raise the specter of it, but I do try to think about, who are customers, what is actually advantageous to them, as we build the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. That's kind of informed what we did first too, right? Exchanges, UFC, boxing, tennis, these kind of individual sports that are hard to do data-driven handicapping on are always way bigger on exchanges than recreational books. They do really good numbers on Betfair and forecasters. And so at first that kind of looked like those are the tier 2 markets after the major American sports for us. But once we saw that we were going to do this sweepstakes angle, it's been player props, player props, player props. We have WNBA player props, you know what I mean? With no tennis matches or boxing matches. I think we'll have tennis next week. But that's that's an unusual way to go about building an exchange, I think. But I think it makes sense for who we're going to be able to offer the product to.
So do you have any idea yet on what the limits are going to be for a lot of these markets? Obviously, when you're operating this model, it's tough to offer massive limits, at risk of, taking a beating. So what's the plan there?
Yeah, so the ceiling is going to be about risk 2,500 on the biggest stuff, on spreads and totals. There are some laws on how much an individual sweepstakes redemption can be per state. In a couple of the states, it's $5,000. So 2,500 at even money gets you to like just being compliant everywhere. It's going to be lower on player props, but it's an exchange, so there's unlimited rebet on everything. You can click as many times as you want. We move. And there's also seeding. So we have users who have been posting, $1,000 on home run props and just getting like filled throughout the day for huge amounts of money on a single home run line.
Interesting. Not bad. Before we move on, sorry, one last question. So we wanted to talk about your own betting. We jumped ahead to NoVig there. When you were betting yourself, I just want to ask, like, what did you start betting? You mentioned you built a couple bots. Like, were you in like a regulated state? Where were you playing? What were you betting on?
I was in New York, so it wasn't regulated until I think the beginning of 2022, and so I was just using offshores and a bookie, and then I just grinded through promos, and I was doing like the most toxic top-down stuff in the first few months that things were out, and burned most of my accounts, and then started talking to the guys I knew who were betting sports more seriously and learning how to actually do it productively. Was mostly moving for people for the first year until I joined NoVig, and then the startup lifestyle, it's just not enough time for it. And so now I still bet. I'll carve out a lot of time for it during NFL season because I really like the NFL and follow it, and the 1 week timeline makes it a lot more digestible. But I don't move for anybody anymore. Sometimes I have a bunch of friends who, like, if they scoop up more than they need on something and they just want to drop it somewhere, they'll just add it to a spreadsheet, and that's fine. I'll take it. But I'm not super active in the betting side right now.
Fair enough.
There's okay, so I've been making some notes here. I've been paying attention, I promise, but there's a lot to unpack with what you've said so far here, and there might be a knowledge gap with viewership or listenership right now. So Johnny and I, obviously, we know what the sweepstakes model is. I know I've chatted with Dean from ProfitX before about this a lot, and Jake as well. And he's explained it to me. I get it. I played DFS back in the day. I've seen Fliff. I know it's complicated, but in your best words, can you just explain to the wider audience here who may not understand what the sweepstakes model is, how that works?
Yeah. Well, the simple explanation is that if you install our app and you make a $500 purchase, you now have $500 worth of cash that you can wager with, which can be redeemed back to dollars. So it functions very similarly for those who want it to a regular sportsbook. What is actually happening is it is a free-to-play app. There are coins that you can bet unlimited as much as you want on anything you want, and they're never worth anything. And it's free to play with coins. And when you buy coins, you are issued cash in parallel to the coins. Additionally, you can play with cash for free by writing us a letter and asking for, I think we do $1 at a time to be deposited into your account. So you think about like the McDonald's Monopoly games that would say no purchase necessary, and most people just buy a Big Mac and you get a tab, but you could like call some number and they'd have to mail you a tab. So it's a similar thing. There's a way to play indefinitely for free with us. And that covers it. And I'm also not a lawyer, so if I got anything wrong, I apologize.
How do I get this free $1 for anyone?
There, somewhere on the website, there will be instructions. The official name of it is Alternative Means of Entry, AMOE. And it has to be a handwritten note requesting $1. I don't know the other specifications of it. And there are people who try to bot this and try to game this. That is part of the ecosystem of this.
People are trying to game literally anything.
Everything. If it can be gamed, it will be gamed. By people.
Honestly, that's a good earn for someone. If you can churn those out, if you can churn those letters out quick, buck at a time, it doesn't take much. No, I'm just kidding.
If you have a source of cheap stamps, dude, like that's already going to boost
the stamp too. You have to pay the postage.
You got to buy the stamp. We're not supplying you the stamp.
So you have to pay the postage and write it out. So this is probably like a 25-cent arb all in.
Yeah.
You know what though? Hey,
25 cents. Not like 25 cents on the dollar. Like, 25 cents.
Yeah, cents. An actual quarter is the arb.
Yeah, but then do you have to roll over or no?
I think we have a minimum redemption, and the amount that you can get from us for free is a lot lower than that. So at some point you're gonna have to wager. Additionally, if you just purchase regularly, we have a 1x rollover. That's just like a anti-money laundering kind of like standard thing.
Of course, yeah, standard there. No, fair enough. I'm just joking. Obviously, like it's not worth the time to.
Well, it depends. I mean, for some people it might be. It probably.
I feel like the point is to make it not worth the time.
It's definitely not worth the time for the vast majority of people. I'm going to ask you to take off your NoVig cap for a second. Figurative cap. It's my understanding that a lot of this sweepstakes model is built off the legal opinion of a select few lawyers who have said, yeah, you know what, this should be allowed, this is kosher. Do you think this is a legitimate long-term solution in the space for people to get into the market? I wonder, will this be challenged at some point, either from the larger sports books, from the general public, or anything like that? What's your unbiased opinion on that?
So first of all, anytime you're building a startup, right, you're trying to write code that's worth $1 billion. And so everything's a long shot, right? It's just like some things have to go your way. So I kind of always have the mindset of like, no matter what we were doing, the odds are stacked against us. It's very hard to win, but you're playing for keeps. You got to keep in mind when in the early days of DFS, FanDuel, DraftKings, also like Draft Street and all those, that was the same thing, man. Those guys looked at the regs. They said, hey, there's a carve out for fantasy football. What is the minimum legal viable definition of a fantasy football game? Could it happen in one day? And in DFS Pick'em has even that's the crack version of it. And all the conversations were identical back then. It was like, okay, this is technically within the bounds of the rules, but sooner or later, somebody is going to say this isn't in the spirit of the rules and stomp it out. And instead what you have is, $50 billion businesses. So it's totally possible to be in the situation we're in and just keep, winning. Like that does happen. And it happened not that long ago. Realistically, so most of the volume for sweeps apps happens in states that don't have legalized sports betting. So Texas and California being huge. Florida is kind of a weird edge case because of the Hard Rock exclusivity thing. And Florida has more reason to stamp out kind of I don't even know what you'd call it, the alternative platforms because of the revenue deals. But so you got California and Texas being like maybe 60% of the volume. The federal government has no interest in touching anything with sports betting. They're letting this all percolate and sort itself out at the state by state level. So you would need challenges to be raised at the state level. And certainly, your DraftKings and FanDuels are not entirely happy about DFS and about sweepstakes. And they might be picking fights, but they have one very specific fight that they are picking in Texas and California. And it is not sweepstakes. It is, we would like to operate in Texas and California, right? And we've seen they'll agree to anything. They agreed to a 51% tax rate in New York. It's just, let us get in there. And the long-term plan, of course, win over customers, then go back, start actually negotiating what you really need to be a profitable operator. We saw DraftKings try to do that with this kind of ill-conceived, additional payout tax in the high tax states in New York and Illinois. They're going to start
call that the Uber surge. That's what it was.
The surge, yeah.
The Uber surge, which everybody clowned on them for it. But like, if you're a bettor, sooner or later you need those big operators to start fighting those states. Like this is not a sustainable model for them in those places. But anyway, that's a tangent. So I don't think they start the fight in the states we care about anytime soon. If and when they do, I think there are a lot of paths to still continuing to operate, especially if you get big, right? Like ultimately these states just want tax revenue, you know? And if you're showing tons of income and it's, hey, make it work like X, Y, and Z so that we're compliant in 4 weeks and we start paying you whatever the new higher tax rate is, done, deal, they're gonna be totally fine with that. But I think we have a fair amount of leash before any of those conversations happen in the places we're concerned about them happening. And I think we have outs even when it does happen, would be my summary.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree with you on that. Listen, I mean, myself and Johnny are bettors. I think competition in the space is good. I think for bettors, it's a great thing when that happens. The issue, what the sweepstakes model is kind of getting around is the liquidity pools, right? And being isolated on a state level. And now you can have a shared liquidity pool. That makes the product a whole lot better, obviously, when you have something like that. And I've been thinking about this a lot. I think there's definitely room for growth. I just wonder that if the exchanges operating under the sweepstakes model start to really take market share at some point, whether it becomes a real battle against some of the bigger sports books, which would honestly be funny because it's in a sense kind of hypocritical with the way that these major books were running DFS before, if they were going to draw a line in the sand. But I do think that potentially poses a problem down the road if this type of model is successful.
Listen, I'll say one thing. The guys listening to this pod, me and you, we fire. This is why we let those guys deal with all their stuff.
Oh yeah, of course. I'm not suggesting differently. Yeah.
We let those guys deal with it. And listen, I'm happy that there's a new place to potentially fire. Depending on the regions. And I know you guys are planning like an extensive launch that's going to hopefully include multiple different jurisdictions and things like that. But yeah, I think all in, we let those guys fight.
Yep, totally agree. On your side, Henry, I wonder. There are some regulated betting exchanges now. There's one specifically in Ontario. Do you think that you'll start to see the regulated exchanges or those who've gone down that path start to switch over to this model if you guys are successful out of the gate?
Well, first of all, it's kind of funny that it's now these two exchanges who are doing it because there's nothing about the model that is particularly attractive for exchanges. I guess the shared liquidity pool is one thing, although
that is very attractive.
Yeah, that is attractive.
We felt like we had some workarounds for that anyway, but that's a story we no longer have to tell. But it's really like, first of all, there's a lot of spots that are trying to do this from zero just because of the gold rush element of it. And I've definitely talked to some smaller operators, and this was a conversation we had when we decided to do this. We're like, man, if we're like just too big to risk it all on this, but there's a good chance we look back in a year and say, why the hell didn't we do that? What were we thinking? Why did we think state by state grinding out these $1 million licenses made any sense? So I don't think anybody's going to start a third sweeps exchange anytime soon. It's hard. Like both us and Private, we poured blood, sweat, and tears in this, but I think you're going to see a ton of kind of white label, wrapper around some other company's odds, just app and marketing business things start happening pretty quickly.
To be fair, you and I'll just say it as it is. You guys aren't really an exchange, right? You just mentioned like you're not. There's no seeders, there's no market makers. You guys are just moving in house off an auto mover. So it's essentially the Sharp Book model, but I think people are able to post their own prices if they want, which obviously no one's going to do.
It's like a hybrid model.
It's the most closed system form of an exchange. So you can post your own orders. You can see the order book. There's depth to it. We don't have any third-party market makers, and you can't bet into us via an API.
Got it. Are you ever planning to add that kind of stuff?
Possibly. There's not a ton of upside. The upside is that you don't have to build what we've built. Like you can say, we're just going to leave that to everybody else. And also if you do that, you have to charge commission, or you have to start scalping people's profits over a threshold. Like you can't do what we're doing. That's part of it. Like if somebody takes an NFL spread at even money and somebody else on the other side, they get an actual NoVig bet. Like if they just hit up a friend on Discord, which you can't really do anywhere else. And that's the other, like a lot of the exchanges, I don't want to talk shit about exchanges, but like I'd much rather be holding 100% than holding 30 or 40% of what some other market maker is holding, and then having to squeeze the customer a little bit more to make that worth my time. So I think it's ultimately like recreational users get the same experience of being able to place orders by orders. And if anything, if I was going to make it more possible to do like professional market making on NoVig, I'd want to do something kind of like what BetAngel is for, I just said the name of the exchange. I'm blanking on it. The big one.
Betfair?
Betfair, yeah. Like I'd much rather incorporate into the app tools for our users to market make intelligently. Like it would be very cool if I could just say, hey, here are our numbers. You can add to the pool here. You can add to the pool. You can front run us by $0.01, or you can backstop us by 5 cents, whatever you want to do. Like I think bringing all that,
cool.
Yeah, like that I think is more interesting.
So just for everyone listening at home who might be thrown off by the name, it appears NoVig, there is actually indeed VIG on the book.
Yes.
There's no commission. There is
commission.
VIG. NoVig is a better name than no commission.
Listen. We'll see how it ends up. Obviously, I know you guys are still in beta mode, but listen, any out that's not limiting players, I think is something that's cool, especially for a lot of people who are listening to this podcast. Potentially have been experiencing things like that. So it's nice to have, and regardless of whether people find value on it or not, time will tell. But 2,500 in the grand scheme of things, like it's 2,500 more than people could have got without NoVig. So I think there'll be a lot of people happy for sure.
Yep. It's one of the reasons that we're proud to have Pinnacle as a sponsor here as well. Books who give people a fair shot and don't limit just for winning. You had mentioned, so you've been with NoVig, I think you said just over a year, correct? Yeah. So you've probably been involved in a lot of the high-level conversations about where the company is going, considering that you're at the point of soft launch right now, and then a launch coming up here around the start of NFL regular season. Was there ever any consideration to relying on third-party market makers instead of doing your own internal market making? Was that ever a conversation that happened?
Yeah, totally. We've talked with a bunch of them. We had some in the pipeline to get approved in Colorado to do it. I was always like the most strongly against it, just because it's like, this is my baby, is doing it ourselves. But there was some thought that you could get the liquidity higher, you could get more market coverage. But honestly, you have to manage a ton, even if you have third parties quoting everything. Like you still have to handle like market life cycles and settlement and all these things. And the integrations are heavy. So the only thing it gets you is more quantity, which I don't know. But the ROI on that, like you look at the whale tracker for Sport Trade, and it's just like totally flat. You know what I mean? I don't think it's driving that much actually into their coffers. So
so on this model, what would you, as head of trading, what would you expect to earn? Like what percentage hold?
In Colorado, we held just shy of like 2.9% every month, which is basically exactly what we wanted to do. We model out our VIG and our quantities. We bucket everything. So if we have -10 on both sides, we've actually denominated like how much of that is because the game starts in 6 hours versus 2 hours. How much of that is because this is a total or a home run prop, or because this rotation number is 6 digits instead of 3 digits, or because it's ball on court in play or timeout in play. And then how much of it, and this is the last thing, is actual profit, is when you account for all those things that make it really hard to trade sports, here's the width that gets us our profit. So obviously the theoretical holds with live and props are higher than 3%. On the main lines, they get lower. But we can kind of back out from all of those like subcategories exactly how much we think we're going to hold and everything. And we've basically always hit right there. And we can tune it. Like if somebody comes on and they're just like destroying us on NHL totals, well, then we check, like, what is our average customer doing? Are they also betting NHL totals? Is it worth just having the high limits and low holds to keep this person on or not? And we can like define that parametrically, and just the whole system updates to like deal the kinds of numbers that we want to deal for that profile of customers.
Got it. AKA they're hawking bets. They're hawking bets on their thing. No, that's good. I mean, at the end of the day, listen, the Sharp model, for people that don't understand, it's the Pinnacle model as well. It's like you can beat them for sure, but they're also going to try to become sharper over time. You know, so it's a cat and mouse game. And I just like, you know, what you said here, if you're winning NHL totals, it doesn't mean you can't beat these places. Like it's quite possible to beat Pinnacle. And they're a sponsor of the show, and we like them, but you can beat them on certain markets. Other markets might be tough, but here's the thing: if you might beat them for 6 months, that's not just going to last forever. You might beat them for 1 month, and then they're going to adjust some stuff. And as long as you keep that model, I think everyone's in business for the long run. And it's obviously harder to just continue to print money, but it's more sustainable.
Well, the other thing that happens too, and this is something we don't have yet, and we're working on it right now. Once you're on every odds screen, and once you have this reputation, right, like you have insurance. Nobody wants to click into you and blow up the board. So, you know, we're taking more sharp. Like I remember when we were in Colorado, we were getting popped. We were on OddsJam, and we would get popped on stuff, and then we would get the buyback from people who saw us on OddsJam, and we're like, oh, that's, you know, good, and they'd come back, and then, you know. But we were getting hit on college basketball overnights, and it would just fly, right? Like, obviously, and I would deal $500 overnight because I was like, I can just get clickbacks on this. And we weren't getting them, and I realized, like, OddsJam, we hadn't told them we were doing college basketball now, and it wasn't there. And then as soon as it was up, people got way more conservative about clicking college basketball overnights into us because they don't want to blow up the board. So if you auto move off everything and never limit anybody, sharps click into you last, if at all. And if your quantities are 2,500, like, you're probably never even getting the click, right? They're going to go try and get the 10K click, and that's kind of the last one that makes everything explode after they've gotten down quietly everywhere else. So, yeah, all the more reason to just do it yourself. Like, you start really looking at it, it's not that hard unless you want to be the biggest, best sports book in the world. Then it gets really hard. If you want to be Pinnacle, it's tough. But if you're willing to be like a slightly smaller fish, it's not that challenging.
You've mentioned auto movers a few times now, so I want to geek out with you a little bit about this because we really haven't talked auto movers on. We're 169 episodes right now, and it's not a topic of conversation that we've broached. I have a lot of questions about this right now. So for those who are unfamiliar, can you walk the audience through what an auto mover is? It's a little bit self-explanatory in the name, but please, if you could do that. And then I want you to talk through your experience in building out the auto mover, because presumably you did not have experience doing this in the past. Maybe you did with your trading job in some capacity, but curious the complexities that you faced in building out an auto mover. And then I might dive into like some very specific examples and kind of ask you how you dealt with those edge cases.
Sure, yeah. Well, auto mover is the word that bettors use to describe when you bet on a market and the odds immediately update without any trader reviewing it or making it happen. It is actually the function of a pricing algorithm on the back end. Any place that doesn't auto move or doesn't auto move off you, it either means they're not using a pricing algorithm that cares about their positions, or they have chosen to filter you out of their positions, right? So like that's how a lot of these places work. When, you know, they say they move off sharp action, it's not really what happens. It's they move off their positions and they filter square accounts out from their positions. They say, for the purpose of calculating our positions, don't even consider these people at all. Just kind of leave it on the cutting room floor, or scale it down. Like maybe the same way you have like 10% limits on FanDuel, a rec might have like 10% of what they bet actually added to the positions that the trader is seeing when numbers are updating. It's a simple algorithm for two-way or multi-way markets. Hansen's Market Maker is a very easy way to do it. You can just Google that. The SmartGet's internal trading system is called Hansen. I'm sure it's named after that. I'm sure they're doing it the same way. And all that does is you give it some sensitivity to an individual dollar. And for every dollar in position you accumulate on a market, it'll fade your prices appropriately. And it distributes it, right? So like you think about if you had a division future where, the Bills and the Dolphins were neck and neck to win the AFC East, and then the Jets were basically out of it and the Patriots are totally out of it. If somebody slams the Dolphins, you would make the price of buying the Dolphins higher. Your price for buying the Bills significantly lower because their previous position was that they actually had some chance, and you basically apply none of the move to the fringe teams that already didn't have a chance, right? That's part of why calculating synthetic hold on multi-way markets is kind of a lie, right? It's because it's not evenly distributed. So that it's very easy if you just have a market where if you're just trading a single market, auto moving is not that hard. And there are some books, like I'm sure you've seen this, Bookmaker does this. I don't know if Pinnacle ever does this, but like if you keep slamming a player prop on Bookmaker, like LeBron James under 27.5, they'll go down to like minus 250 on that side rather than going to 26.5 because they don't have or they have not integrated their actual models of LeBron James points. They're probably getting it from a vendor, right? It's like a $200 limit. I'm sure they're not making that number. So it's very easy to just keep trading that specific market one way or another. What's hard is if you actually want to move down to 26.5, move down to 25.5, because those are entirely new markets. And that's what people expect, right? When you bet a NFL total under 43, you want it to go to 42.5. You don't want to just be trading that one number all day. So that requires actual simulations and models of distributions of possible totals or possible spreads or whatever, so that you can understand how much 43 is in 42. And there's a lot. And also, how far down do you have to go before 42 is actually closer to your midpoint 50-50 event. And then the real tough one is if you have cross traffic, right? So you have bets on over this line, under this line, plus this spread, minus this spread. You really have to calculate exposures to individual scores and say, how much money do I win or lose if this game ends 31-10? And then, okay, so I need to fade away from that number. And do that dynamically. And that's tough. And it's really tough the more dimensions you add to it. Not to get too in the weeds, but like from a computer science perspective, if you have M markets, you have N to the M time complexity on calculating this stuff. So a computer can't do it. If you're talking about like, we're going to do all our player props this way, blah, blah, blah. All this, in soccer where there are so few outcomes and it's all just goals, they could kind of keep adding these things and trading them super, super efficiently, where you bet exact score or first half or whatever, and everything can update. But when you're looking at, whether or not a fullback is going to have a catch in a game or not, and you're trying to move your total off of bets on that, like a server can't handle it. So you have to decide what you want to do well and invest more effort and processing power into that, and then maybe be a little sloppier on some of the other markets. And it's different. Like we said, at the offshores, those player props are real low. On DraftKings or FanDuel, obviously they're limiting a lot of people, but in general, they're taking a ton of player prop money. And some people are getting a few grand down on touchdown scores. So
I've been saying this.
Yeah.
I've been saying this for weeks now, and everyone's commenting like, that's impossible. I've been saying this. Go ahead, sorry, but I appreciate that.
So it changes your priorities on like you might, they wouldn't do this for an NFL spread, but like for tennis main lines, certainly up until very recently, FanDuel was just like cloning some vendors' numbers, right? Like you go to a tennis match on FanDuel, it doesn't even look like the other sports. It's just like copy and paste of something. Like why bother? but they're definitely modeling all their own player props and have some real understanding that, you know, if everybody's clicking overs on LeBron, then maybe Anthony Davis isn't going tonight. Like that is built in there. They're not just trading those on the money back and forth. Yeah. So that, I don't even know if I'm answering what you asked about. But.
Well, no, that was great. I love the level of complexity that you got into there. Specifically, I've always had questions around how you move off of like the derivative markets, right? Like, somebody bets full game against the spread, one side. I assume that in a lot of cases, you're also going to move the other markets that are associated with that, first half market, potentially first quarter. What if it's vice versa? Like, what if someone comes in and is slamming a first quarter in an NBA game? Do you move off? Do you move the first half line and the full game line? Do you move any player props? So, like, how do you treat an edge case like that?
Yeah. Well, we have full game simulations, including results at the end of quarters and halves. We don't trade them right now because I think it's pretty toxic flow. And if I'm going to take toxic flow, I'd rather have it be on like a player prop market that's a new thing than a derivative. We do the alts, but we don't do the halftimes, but we have them and I can see them. What you end up doing is you calculate the correlation between, let's say the halftime market and the full game market, right? So whenever the Bills cover -7.5 at halftime, we see that 80% of the time they also cover the full game spread. Then whatever the exposure is that you've just taken to that -7.5, you apply 80% of that exposure to the -13.5 or whatever, and you apply 20% of it to the other team winning, right? Because you now also do have exposure to the half game winner, full game loser kind of situation. And then you just let those trading algorithms that only look at your positions determine what they should fade the prices to. But it's a synthetic position, right? It's like we've accumulated some position on this full game line by virtue of the fact that it's correlated with this other thing. And that also, because if you're doing that by dollar, that helps you from things for like if you're taking 5K on the full game, 1K on the halftime, you could get caught in some trap of like, oh, somebody just max bet the halftime line, right? But it's like, no, you want to go dollar for dollar. Right. And so only think of that as, 800 on this one, 200 on this one.
Yeah, I'm wondering in the sense of people using the alt lines or derivatives to manipulate the main game line and then come back and hit, a higher amount of dollars on that.
Yeah, it wouldn't work at those limits.
Yeah, at those it doesn't really matter. But go ahead.
The trick for that is using copycat books, right? Is like, I can do this for cheap and I know this place that's just hanging the same number and then I can come back on it way bigger, right? There's usually a few more steps involved. But yeah, there are definitely angles there.
Interesting.
Wanted to ask you about the, I guess like we'll call it like the parlay stuff, the SGP. I've heard the founder of NoVig talk about how they're potentially looking at that kind of stuff. What are your thoughts on that? Like actually pricing that? Like, are you guys going to include SGPs, things like that? I heard the rumor is yes, but you can confirm.
We're definitely incorporating SGPs. We're definitely going to offer them over the counter. They're not going to go onto a book. It's not going to be here. You come on the other side. The only place I know of that does.
What do you mean over the counter?
So you pick all those markets. We quote a number, and you can click bet. And it's not like, here's what's on the order book for that specific parlay. Do you want to back it or lay it? Do you want to request a better price? Like none of that functionality is going to be available. It's going to be It's going to be like it is on a standard sports book. The only place I know, I get there are probably a few places that do parlays, but I know, for instance, like Bet Openly has some same game parlays that they put on order book, and it's just flooded with correlated stuff and kind of like toxic trying to fool people things. And it's a mess, isn't it? It's like a solution in search of a problem, right? To have like some 4-leg parlay sitting two-sided on a order book. So we'll do it. We'll have limits. It won't be unlimited rebet because we just can't support it that way. And it's really just about delivering it as a product rather than like this is fully within the ethos of unlimited rebet, everybody can do anything they want kind of exchange stuff. Because people want it. And, like, we think we can make it happen.
Yeah, I think one of the inherent challenges with the current exchange model is attracting recs, frankly. I mean, the products tend to, I mean, forget about attracting recs. There are some sharps that don't want to use exchanges because it's just different. Like it's not something that they're used to relative to traditional betting. So that's already a challenge. But then when you're not offering the bet types that recs are typically looking for, specifically props and SGPs, I mean, it's got to be an extreme challenge to onboard anyone at that point. So it's really interesting that you guys are going down that path. I've consumed some other content that you've done. I do prep for these, by the way, contrary to popular belief. People are asking me all the time, like, oh, do you prep? Do you vet the people who are coming on? Yes, I do.
So for the audience, the run sheet from Rob is crazy detailed. I think he literally consumed all the content I've done because there's not that much of it.
Possibly, yeah. At least half of it for sure. But
Pizzola is a true pro. Everybody knows that he's a true pro when it comes to the podcast game.
I appreciate that.
He is. Listen, every week the guest gets a run sheet. I get a run sheet. You know, on occasion I'll add in a few things that I will run by Pizzola. Hey, ask this guy about this. We'll ask him about this. But for the most part, man, this guy's lights out on these outlines.
Thank you. This is very flattering from both of you right now. I do appreciate that.
Full honesty though, it keeps the podcast going because I used to consume a lot more betting content in the space. Now, not as much, just because it's a little frustrating to listen to some of these other podcasts. But if it's all over the place and everything like that, like it makes for a genuinely worse listening experience.
Yeah, I like to just assemble. We're going into like my podcasting, strategy now. I like to assemble like a very clear flow of. I think it makes sense to go over these topics. I think the guest will be interested. Like I don't want to fire questions that I think that there's not going to be a great answer or that the audience already knows for the most part. So I just like to be organized is what it comes down to. I think it makes a big difference. Yeah. That stems from me starting in the call. I was a radio producer, so I used to have to put together scripts.
But at the same time, we don't just like stick to this paper. Like if you look at our sheet right now,
we're all over the place.
We're out of order, but that's because it is what it is. You start talking. We brought up Sweepstakes model. That was actually kind of at the end. So we got to skip past that now. Hey,
of course, it is what it is.
A little inside circles off.
It doesn't matter. You got to go with the flow, right? You have some general talking points you want to get to, but how you get there might be different every single time. But I have, Henry, consumed your content. You're very well spoken, and it's great. But you also have what I would say is like maybe something I picked up on. Maybe it's a reputation for challenging the status quo in the industry. A lot of people, I think, are just like, yeah, this is. You're a little bit. That's one of the characteristics I picked up on from you. So I'm interested in what you think some of the biggest misconceptions are that people have about sports betting and market making in the betting space today.
Well, I'll start with I loved what you guys said in the BetBash recap about the ABV roundtable, and I don't want a union, and have you really thought about the second order effects of all this stuff? I mean, this is something I try not to go off and be too negative on Twitter or anything, but like I think people who bet for a living totally have the wrong idea about trying to pursue some kind of regulatory mechanism to get them higher limits or keep them on books longer or anything like that. Like I think that's a very bad idea. And in general, I have a ton of respect for everybody who's advocating for it. Like it's all the nicest, most invested, best people in the space, but I just completely disagree with them on the concept. In general, if you're a participant in a market and you're making money, either on the buy side or the sell side, and you're one of the killers, the 99th percentile, it is very helpful to you for that market to be deregulated and out of the line of sight of anybody who wants to stick their finger in it and mess with things. And like I think crypto people get this, right? It's just like a politician who's pro-crypto is good for me and who's anti-crypto is bad for me. There's no sense of like, well, he's going to screw my counterparty to my benefit, so I like what this guy's saying. And sports bettors don't seem to get that. I think they have this particularly adversarial relationship with sports books, and don't realize how closely their interests are aligned, and how many dominoes could fall if we started going down the wrong path with all of this stuff.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought this up. So I've had this conversation off air about the ABV with Spanky this week. We chatted for about 45 minutes, and we don't see eye to eye, obviously, and he's entitled to his opinion on it, and he formed this collective, and he believes he's doing right on behalf of the bettors. He's totally entitled to that opinion. Zach posted a clip on Circles Off HQ on Twitter last week. Make sure you're following us on Twitter.
Yeah, not enough people following the Twitter.
Yeah, follow on Twitter. It's an easy way to get updates on the show. But Zach posted a clip of me talking about this, and Captain Jack, who I respect a lot, responded to it and said, like, you know, kind of don't listen to this. This is fear mongering. This is not gonna, you know, this is not gonna happen in reality. Books are not, the product's not gonna get worse. They're not gonna pull markets. And I wanted to eventually use our own platform on Circles Off. It's coming up here, but when I used to consult for sports books back in the day, I was what the equivalent of a commercial director would be for a sports book as part of my consultation role. I would have been the person in charge of making this decision for probably the biggest offshore sports book in North America. Now, different, it's not regulated market, but if someone came to me and said, hey, Rob, the guy who's reviewing all the commercial numbers, we have to take a minimum $500 bet on every single one of these markets. I'm going to run some math on all this, and I'm going to say, guess what? We're pulling a bunch of these markets, and then someone might come to me and say, well, Rob, we risk people going to another sports book and betting these markets there. And I'm going to say, who cares? Like, they're not going to be a profitable customer for us, so let's pull this market. And I truly believe that will happen. Now, I'm not saying the products are going to get horrible, but I think certainly forget about the days where you can bet a $500 same game parlay on, you know, bench players in the NBA, third liners in hockey, you know, and things of that nature. I think the product suite ultimately gets worse because of it. So I do believe in that stance. I don't want people fighting on behalf of me. And additionally, multi-accounting is not going to go away. Let's call it out for what it is. I do not suggest you ever multi-account on a regulated sports book. I mean, this is against the law in several states and provinces. Don't do it. I'm giving you advice. It's your own risk. You know, you do whatever you want to do. I'm not suggesting you do this, but the reality is it does happen in the space. And just because you tell somebody now you can bet $500 doesn't mean they're going to stop going out and trying to accumulate accounts. They're still going to do it because the money is green. Like, it's not, in my opinion, going to affect the behavior of a lot of bettors already. So I think that there's big time repercussions for sports books. I do think ultimately it's fair for everyone if everyone has the same limits. I'm not talking about what's fair and what's not, but from that perspective, I think that there's a lot of problems when you have one collective arguing on behalf of all these people, all who have different betting tendencies, bankrolls, styles, and things of that nature. So that's kind of my spiel on the situation. I'm not sure if you agree with that or not, Henry, but those are my thoughts.
I agree completely. I think you're totally on point.
All right. Thank you. I did need that. I need the validation, the pat on the back. Listen, everyone's entitled to their opinion. I respect Spanky. I respect Jack. At the end of the day, they feel that they're doing right for the better, and I'm not going to argue with that. I just do think that it has negative ramifications for a lot of bettors in the space. And right now, I think part of the game is being able to overcome those obstacles. But I think that's what separates like great bettors from good bettors and average bettors and things of that nature.
You can adapt, you know. Just to throw it out real quickly, one of the things me and Judah talked about when we were at BetBash, you know, the reason the same game parlay stuff he grinds is so important is you can let the books tell you what they want you to do. You know, if they want you to bet this stuff, then do that. Figure out how to do that. A lot of people have been doing the same thing in the same sports for 15 years, and they don't want to have to adopt. And at some point, you have to read the writing on the wall. And we're still pretty early. You know, there's a lot coming. A lot of the target audiences for all of these marketing campaigns have been men in their 20s, right? Who are now, getting jobs, making more money, able to bet more. Like just watch this space for the next 5 years. A lot is going to shift. And yeah, that's all.
You brought up Judah. Judah is Judah Fortgang at Throw the Damn Ball on Twitter. Is new to the forward progress team at the Hammer this year. So Eric Eager, VP of Analytics for the Carolina Panthers, congratulations. It sucks not having Eager part of the network and part of the content this year. He told me when he left, he's like, you got to do me one favor. You got to get one guy, and it's Judah, which I did manage able to recruit him for Forward Progress. So if you don't know what Forward Progress is, it's our NFL division of the Hammer. Make sure you subscribe here on YouTube. You can check us out in audio form as well. Goes a long way. We got tons of great content coming up this year. But you co-host...
Wait, just so people know, the Forward Progress channel is a lot different than this one. Right here, we talk betting strategy and stuff like that. Forward Progress, there's a lot of shows that actually will, give out some picks, give out some strategy and insights specific to NFL and actually betting and beating football at specific things. So completely different. If you're a fan of this show, you may also be a fan of that show. If you're a fan of Forward Progress, may not be a fan of this. You don't check it out and see for yourself.
Absolutely. So I wanted to ask you, Henry, obviously you co-hosted that NFL betting seminar with him at BetBash. I witnessed about 20 minutes of it. What was that experience like for you overall? And honestly, I was going to plug like Judah myself, but I think you think pretty highly of him, so I'll give you the floor. I want it to come from someone else.
Yeah, the experience overall is humbling to stand next to Judah and try to talk about the NFL. We had a good division of responsibilities. He was in charge of talking about the NFL season. I was in charge of needling Steve Fezzik if he got out of line, which he did. So
Johnny knows all about that. That's like,
who's that? No, I'm kidding.
Can I tell one Fezzik story?
Sure.
From BetBash?
Tell as many as you want.
Twist my arm, buddy.
So he was lingering outside of our seminar space, the conference room, 5 minutes before it was going to start. And I introduced myself to him, and he said, "You're running the NFL seminar? Okay, give me one play right now that you like, and don't give me a deadline. I'm sick of people giving out lines that aren't on the board anymore." And I thought, okay, I'm gonna say something fun because I don't want to get adversarial with Steve Fezzik in front of my seminar as everybody's coming in. So I said, I like Gerard Mayo to be first head coach fired at 75-1. I think that's a fun flyer. And he goes, "No chance. The optics are too bad. Try again." I said, "All right, Steve, you want a real line? I like Chargers, Raiders under. I think you can still get 43. Chargers, Raiders under 43. And he pauses for a second. He goes, "You can get 43. I checked the board this morning because I love it. Nice play." And then he walked inside. It's like, oh, thank God.
We actually just mentioned Forward Progress for this season. If you want to get all of Fezzik's plays, you can actually get those on Forward Progress. Or actually, sorry, though, that's Hitman.
That's Hitman's plays.
Same thing.
Yeah. I love what you did there. I love inside joke for people who don't know. Yeah, that's going to turn. There's more content coming on Circles Off in the next few weeks. We got like a secondary form of content starting soon. I think it'll be a big hit. It will explain stuff like what Johnny just talked about right now. Did you? That was really good. Because you delivered it with a straight face. Like, I couldn't tell that it was a joke for a second.
I honestly was like, oh no, if Steve is on the Hammer, I probably shouldn't have told the story about him. But
no, Steve is a part of our, we have him on for live watch-alongs during the NFL season. I don't know if that's going to continue again this year, but we'll try. He's an interesting character. I agree and disagree with him on many things in life, but
Zach's making me laugh too hard. I got to stay professional.
Zach is still laughing very hard back there at that joke. It was a good joke. It was a good joke. We'll wrap it up here. It's very nice of you joining us today, Henry. Obviously, I know you listen to the pod because you've tweeted at Circles Off HQ before, specifically about arriving at the airport early, I believe. Are you a proponent of that or not?
I think any man who has a wife and kids knows that you are the only person in your household who has any inclination to get to the airport on time whatsoever. And you have to calibrate yourself towards getting there early, or else you're just going to miss the flight. And I've had to run through security one too many times to be casual about it. Now, when I flew solo back in the day, sure, get there at the last minute, global entry, easy peasy. But things change.
All right. I mean, I don't have kids, so I don't know.
Just for this take, I wasn't even saying get to the airport like a minute before. I was just saying get to the airport like so that you don't have to wait and purposely spend time at the airport. It was more for the whole like 2 hours, 3 hours before people who go to the airport, because that is a thing. There's a lot of people who genuinely go 3 hours before the flight just in case anything happens. But like, yeah, if you have a wife and kids and there's going to be you're anticipating some delays, then obviously budget accordingly. You don't go 15 minutes before. You go an hour and 30 before maybe, whereas I might go 45 before. You might go hour 30 with kids. There's still a way to budget it where you can actually be more optimal with this airport thing. But yeah, still way too many hours being wasted. Also, I gave out on last week's episode the Plus EV Move, the Snuggle neck pillow.
Yeah.
Man, boy, did I leave at least tens of dollars on the table by not getting an affiliate link on that.
I know. There are lots of comments last week that they bought the pillow.
I could probably made $1 per pillow on that, an affiliate deal. Just kidding. It is what it is.
Well, we talked about that on the show, and I don't use Instagram a lot, but I check in like once a day. I'm getting served up hard Instagram ads on travel pillows right now. So the phones are always listing.
Definitely are.
Just another lesson in life.
That's totally what's happening. Has nothing to do with you sitting next to Johnny for 3 hours a day every day.
Do you have your Plus EV minus EV move of the week?
I do, and I've learned from you guys the key to high engagement Plus EV is giving out the most insane travel tip that you possibly can.
Perfect.
So I've opted to do that. This was the worst possible travel take that I thought I could even try to defend, which is when you book a ticket on a plane, sit in the very last row. And here is why. If the plane is sold out, you're screwed. But when the plane is not sold out, the stewardesses like to clear that row out so they have a place to sit. And so they will ask everybody sitting in that row if they would like to move to the front of the plane. And sometimes they will give you a premium seat for free if you opt to move out of the back row. So you can avoid paying for a seat by picking the worst seat on the plane and possibly get luxury seating and more often at least get up to about halfway up the plane.
Interesting. Now, like
I'll disagree hard. That's a significant negative EV.
I personally never, ever booked the back of the plane, ever. Now, I have seen the back row.
He's saying voluntarily book the back.
I've seen the back row. You would need to calculate. You could apply math to this, right? Like the percentage time that you are going to be upgraded to, I would say, business class or better. I think if it's like in the 20% range,
definitely not 20%.
There's
like
no
to
chance
get
it's
upgraded
20%.
to first class. Upgraded to first class is like you get that maybe over under lifetime 1.5.
I think the only redeeming thing that I could think about of sitting at the back of the plane is that you don't have to deal with all the idiots at like when your plane lands. You just know you're getting off last.
But is the bathroom lavatory, as they call it, at the back of the plane as well? Because even then you got to factor that in as well.
There is a bathroom at the back of the plane. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and they line up outside the bathroom too. Like people don't like. There are symbols all over the plane that tell you when the bathroom is free. You can just wait, but they form a line at the back of the plane all the time. So I don't
listen. We'll see how that one gets received. Obviously, if you can, I feel like you could just ask for an upgrade anyways. Though as soon as you get there, provided you got there 3 hours early, you can just go up to the front and be like, "Hey, can I get an upgrade?" And
I'm sorry, I thought this was a gambling podcast.
Yeah, no, it's actually a Plus EV gambling podcast. Yeah. We only make good value bets here.
The back of the plane. I'm going to piggyback because I have a travel one again as well. This one is not quite. I don't know where that one came from. I don't know how that one's going to be received. This one actually comes from Cleve TA, who posted it in our Forward Progress group chat this week. It's been on my list for a while, but I want to credit him just in case I get like any blow back like a Hitman Fezzik type of situation, right? Like he posted in there, I had it written on my own like notes. Anyways,
Disclaimers in.
Plus EV move of the week. You got to do this all the time. I see people all the time that they're just on the plane and they don't understand that the temperature in the plane is going to fluctuate as you fly. You are not, you might get on, might be a nice summer day, 30 Celsius, whatever that is in like 95 Fahrenheit. You think you're great. You're in your shorts, in your t-shirt. You get up in the air. The air conditioning's cranking. Everyone's freezing. You see like the guy's nipples next to you are popping through his shirt because it's so cold. Pack a sweater with you in your carry-on every time you go. I'll go as far as saying I actually prefer a zip-up if you can. It's not something that you have to take on and off over your head because it's just very easy in your seat. Zip up, zip down. It makes a huge difference on every flight because the temperature is going to fluctuate, especially on these cross-country flights. You do a Toronto to Vegas, you go through the motions in temperatures over the course of that flight. So that's actually a real good one.
Agree.
Not like what Henry gave out.
I'll agree on that one wholeheartedly, as Rob would say. That's a very good agreement there. I always pack a sweater. You never know.
You don't know. You never know. There's no downside. It's in your bag. It's like a extra
slight downside to carry it, but it's going to be likely cold on the plane. All right, I'll go mine. I have actually a full list on my phone here, plus EV, minus EV. So I'll pick a travel one just so we can stick with the theme. This one is when you travel, people usually bring a little bag of toiletries with them, maybe some shampoo, toothpaste, toothbrush, stuff like that. This one, it's just significant plus EV. Get a new reusable, disposable toothbrush every time you travel. You don't want to be saving the same one. I've seen it too many times. People have like a travel bag and they have like a toothbrush case, and then they'll put it in there and then they use that same one. It's accumulating bacteria in there for, in between months in between your travels. It's not that much. Buy a pack and then you have those and a new one every time in there, full in the package. Plus EV move of the week.
Yeah. I think we batted 667 on today's show, if you ask me.
You got a negative?
I do. My negative EV is this microphone. I thought this thing would be ripping, and apparently I sound like a tin can. And just in general, you probably can't tell, but I have a habit of buying music equipment and recording equipment, and it is the most expensive habit on earth with zero ROI. That a lot of guys
record music
like
at all?
myself.
Or?
Yeah, I record a little music.
What do you
under my
play?
own name. I do like drum machine and synthesizer stuff. I think I have one track on Spotify that's under my name that exists out in the world.
Pizzola's a pretty good musician.
Yeah, I'm a guitar player. Back in the day, before he got too big time, I was going to record like an album with Preston Johnson, Sports Cheetah. But then he made like $1 billion off of NFTs and owns a soccer team now, and like that's not going to happen anymore. But maybe we'll do a collab at some point.
That's often when people start pursuing their foolish creative dreams, is when they've made that $1 billion. So I don't think
you got a shot with him now.
Yeah.
He's recording with way better musicians than me now.
That's the
he
thing.
found himself like a real band. But with the art of post-production, people will probably not hear the quality of the mic. We do have producer Zach here, who's
that's what I'm hoping.
He does a pretty good job.
I think honestly, I'm just pointing it the wrong way. I think I'm supposed to be over here.
Oh, you know what?
That might have been it.
But once we started, I couldn't change it.
Well, you could have.
Sorry, you look good at least. You look good at least. You look good.
Yeah, maybe it's meant to be talked your head hit
like
your head
every
at a
other
different
microphone
angle.
on earth. Yeah, that's probably right.
Yeah,
I've got a negative EV move of the week here. This one, so it's for those of you who are in Toronto with us here. It's carnival season, Canadian National Exhibition. Negative EV move of the week, whether it's at the CNE or anywhere else. Do not ever go on a portable carnival roller coaster or Ferris wheel. There's just no way. These things are being brought in and assembled in 6 to 8 hours. And I know I said I could assemble that F1 car, but I don't even think I could assemble one of these Ferris wheels correctly because these things are just not safe. Every year you see videos around Canada and the US, at least a couple of them falling over. Sometimes there's death, sometimes there's serious injuries, but avoid at all costs. if there's a legit amusement park where the roller coaster is actually like permanently there and built in, doesn't apply to that. I feel like those are a little more safer. But these amusement park ones where they're like carnivals and they bring them in on a truck, avoid at all costs. Negative EV move of the week.
Yeah, I think you hit 2 out of 2 here. I've seen them assemble these things before. I'm stuck in traffic on the Gardner. People who are not from Toronto know what I'm talking about. But I love thrill rides personally. I'm not riding pop-up thrill rides. Like I have better.
They're not even good. They're not even good rides too. They're like dangerous, and they're not even like exhilarating roller coasters. They're like base level roller coasters.
My Canadian National Exhibition experience is usually 2 to 3 hours at that horse wheel that they spin. It's got like all the classic horses, biggest minus EV imaginable as a better, but
it's all gambling games.
Like
Secretariat, that's all it is.
Man of War, like bunch of, and they spin a wheel and there's like 3 arrows and it pays. Anyways, very addictive.
It's literally all gambling games there. That's all it is. You go there and you're definitely losing like 38% hold on all these games. And then the prize is a stuffed animal, but hey, you got to do it.
I don't even care about the prizes.
You just want to
play
win
for the rush of seeing that wheel spin. Yeah, 100%. I want to hit Man of War pretty regularly. Let's end it on this. If you could go back 5 years and talk to a previous version of yourself, Henry, what advice would you give your former self?
Well, so I quit drinking about 11 years ago, and I was probably the best decision I ever made, and I feel really good about just about everything I've done since then. So I would be totally fine if I saw myself 5 years ago just saying, keep on keeping on, you're doing great. With that being said, if I had one piece of advice, and I probably wouldn't have listened to it anyway, I would say have kids right now. Stop waiting. When it's all said and done, all you're going to want at the end of your life is to have had another year or 2 with them. So why are you putting it off now? And yeah.
Is it a personal question? We can bleep this out if you want, but what age were you 5 years ago?
I was 31.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Yeah. Neither.
I would have had a lot of advice to give John Harbaugh about the 2019 AFC divisional game if I could go back in 5 years. That would probably be more important to me. If you gave me the option between speaking to myself or John Harbaugh, I would snap choose B.
I probably would. Like if I could change the course of like my favorite teams, sports teams, I'd probably do that before more than giving myself advice. I don't know.
I'd be giving myself advice. I don't really care about sports, to be honest, guys.
I've had so much heartbreak over the years.
I obviously want my teams to win, but man, betting really ruins you as a fan, eh?
It really does.
It really does. I never really had an NFL team, more just, pure fan of the league. Same with college sports. But, I used to be such a big Leaf fan. Like, I used to watch every game, like, basically how Zach was, like, 2 years ago. But just over the years, just through betting, I just kind of, like, lost interest, and then it wasn't that important to me, and teams are always, like, okay, and, never made a run, and just call it. Now, I don't really watch many regular season games. I'll throw it on in the background, but I used to literally watch every single game. Crazy, eh? No good.
Change over time. I used to watch sports like 14 hours a day when I was a teenager. I'm not even I had NFL Network on at all times. Like, there's not an exaggeration. Now I don't know when the last time I watched NFL Network was. His name's Henry. You can follow him on Twitter at Big Buck Hunter. We'll link that down in the description below. We are gunning for 10K subs here on Circles Off. We're almost there. If you're not subbed to the channel yet,
close.
Please just sub to the channel. It's a nice milestone for us. We do have some swag to give out as well. So 10K subs, smash that like button down below as well. And of course, we read all the comments. So if you enjoyed the episode, you want to talk about anything, if you want to give Henry shit for his terrible plus EV move of the week, you can do that down in the comments below as well. Thank you everyone for tuning in. This has been Circles Off, episode number 169. We'll catch everyone next week.